Therapists of Reddit, what was your biggest, I know I'm not supposed to judge you, but holy sh*t moment? I was counseling a 13-year-old girl for anxiety, and she reported sexual abuse from her stepdad. I called her mom and told her mother I needed to call Child Protective Services. Turns out that CPS was already aware, and the abuse was first reported around the patient's age 7. Mom was aware of the abuse and stayed with her husband anyway. It was a complicated situation, and it wasn't. How could she not do more to protect her daughter? Sorry, lady, I'm judging. My professor once shared what a patient said that made her quit her job. I didn't repay my daughter, she liked it. The daughter was 6. She couldn't take it anymore. He worked in a rehabilitation center for people who have been sentenced for serious crimes and were forced to get mental help. Really difficult job. And this pushed her over the edge. I work at a residential group home. We had a kid who we had admitted about 4 months prior, when in a family session, they mentioned they had parasites. I'm like, what? Mom goes, oh yeah, whole family has them. We don't believe in getting rid of them since they're part of our biological ecosystem, and I'm just dumbstruck. We spent 3 weeks afterwards convincing this family it was an infectious disease. Concerns as other residents have fecal eating behaviors and various other unsanitary issues that could cause a unit spread. 3 weeks of education, planning, and worst of all, convincing this kid and mother that their IQ wouldn't drop because they had agreed to irradiate the parasites. Lots of CBT work, but Jesus, it took way longer than any of my team expected. Once had a patient whose wife shook their baby to death. He wanted help reconnecting with his wife. At the time, I was a young father of a newborn myself, and he triggered a lot of fear in me for my own child, a deep loathing of his spouse, and pity the, how pathetic, kind for the patient. I tried for 3 sessions, met his spouse and everything before handing the case over to my supervisor who knew about my initial reactions, and tried to help me through it. Unfortunately, it ended up being more about my feelings than his, and I was new to the profession at the time. These things are expected to crop up from time to time, but I was still taken aback by my own reactions. I do acute pediatric inpatient behavioral therapy. Has never happened with a child, and never will. Parents, on the other hand, can be real pieces of shit, and the way they treat or abuse their children then throw them off on us and scream, fix them. I'm a big burly guy and I've cried many nights over this. I work with kiddos who have experienced some kind of abuse or trauma. 90 of my clients have been sexually abused. I have a lot of holy shit moments, but not from judgment of my clients, but from what happened to them. I've had clients whose father made them help him dismember mom's body after dad dreared her in front of them. I've had clients under the age of 8 who have been sex trafficked. I've had clients who have been forced to film torture porn. I have holy shit moments all the time. I was once in my psychiatrist's office, a bi-monthly, 15 minutes med check. She asked me what was going on more as conversation. I told her that in the last 6 weeks, my 3 elders aunt and 2 uncles I was guardian or conservator for had died one right after the other. My wife had a heart attack. My daughter attempted suicide. And my mom broke her hip and had laid on her floor for a week before being found. She drank and ate from the dog's bowls. I got that call within 10 minutes of setting up the last funeral. She stopped the meeting, got on the phone with the therapist in the office next to her, and had her postpone her next meeting to speak with me. I was so ducked up, I had no idea. I think she saved my life. It's not often I get to talk about my profession, but here goes. I was working at a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center and had a client come in who was a self-proclaimed drug lord. As we worked together, he told me about his history. Included in this history was how he got to where he was currently at. During the conversation, this man admitted to selling his sister into sex slavery, forcibly courting her with several sedatives and narcotics, and having several people teach her a lesson what this meant. He never shared. He told this story with a blank face, smiling only when he recalled the good times, which he referred to as times when he had enough hero and to get through the day. I'm not sure where he is at now, but this man inspired me to work with victims of sex trafficking, because not only do they deal with the stigma of selling their bodies, they often manage drug addictions, People would honestly be floored if they realized how many people were addicted to chemicals that they were forcibly given. I feel like a lot of the comments saying that they never judge their clients might be working in voluntary services, or they've been very fortunate in their client base. Judgment isn't an inherently bad thing. It's how we know that murdering people is wrong. So when a convicted pedophile client told me, "Nothing gets me going like a pair of little girls worn ties," you better believe I judged the FCAC out of him. I continued to work with him, and I treated him with compassion and respect, because he's a human being worthy of both. I did my job because I'm a professional, but I can't honestly say that I didn't judge him. I judged that he should never be around children. I judged that he is not yet ready for change. I judged that his access to his own daughter should be closely supervised. That's a lot of judgments. Understanding your own inherent biases and how they influence your work is a very important part of training and practice. Here's my most recent one. As the pandemic worsened here in the US and more lockdowns are on their way, one of my most extroverted clients and I brainstormed ways to meet her social needs while remaining safe. The following week, she canceled her session and told me that she's positive for COVID after attending an orgy, which definitely wasn't one of our ideas. I let out the deepest, most defeated sigh after I hung up the phone. Lots of people discussing pedophilia as an example of the toughest stuff to not judge. Despite our training, I haven't yet treated a pedophile, thankfully. At least not an identified one. I did run a men's anger management group though, and some of those men had done some terrible things to women. Most of them I found ways to like and admire for their positive aspects, but there were two guys in that group I just could never find unconditional positive regard for. One guy basically never spoke in group. He would give one-word answers and occasionally just discuss how unfair the system was to him. I worked really hard to open him up and find things to connect over, but he never opened up to me or the group. He left the group after he strangled his girlfriend and went to jail. She survived, thankfully. The other left group early, routinely, showed up late, participated minimally, and similarly never wanted to open up honestly. He left early one group, after we had discussed him staying to the end, and threatened me when I told him he wasn't going to get credit for attendance, something the court required. Oddly, I eventually moved into the apartment below him completely without knowledge and listened to him scream at his girlfriend and break tea while I called the cops. I judge these men. They're shy. Maybe they're redeemable, but redemption requires self-exploration, and they both refused to do so. It's worth noting how differently I felt about them than so many others in the group. Men I found ways to help and admire and respect, even in spite of their awful behavior in the past. I joined in a review of a secluded patient, and he threw a cup of wee and poo in my face when we opened the door. I tried to be objective about his experience, but I just thought, what a C-ent. I work in inpatient services, so it can be hard to challenge myself at times. Individuals with diagnosis of personality disorder, for example, can do things that in isolation make you think they're just being bratty or manipulative. But to think of the experiences that shape them to react like that in a given situation can help to clear my judgment and find compassion. Harder when someone bites me or hits me with one of our fabulously detachable anti-ligature curtain poles, though.